Okay, so you want to own a frontier general store. You picture the business first. A wooden building at a dusty crossroads. A porch with barrels by the door. Flour sacks stacked against the wall. Coffee, salt, sugar, lamp oil, soap, cloth, nails, rope, boots, seed, tools, tinware, candy jars, and household goods arranged behind the counter. A farmer comes in for coffee and salt. A ranch hand needs rope and repair supplies. A mother asks for flour, thread, and lamp oil. A traveler wants to know whether the mail came in. A child stares at the candy jar like it is the richest thing in the county. From the outside, it looks like one of the safest businesses on the frontier. Everybody needs supplies. Everybody eats. Everybody repairs things. Everybody runs out of coffee, salt, sugar, soap, oil, nails, and cloth eventually. And if your store is the only one for miles, it feels as if every household in the district has to come through your door. So the surface math looks simple. Buy goods wholesale, put them on shelves, sell them for more, repeat until the settlement grows around you. That is the dream. Here is the first crack. The shelves are full. The cash drawer is not. Because on the frontier, a full shelf does not mean profit. It often means your money is trapped inside inventory, while your customers are trapped between harvests, wages, bad roads, and promises. A family needs flour today, but the crop sells in autumn. A worker needs coffee this week, but wages come later. A farmer brings eggs or honey instead of coins. A neighbor asks to put one more purchase on account, because everyone knows he is good for it. The goods leave the store. The cash does not always come back at the same speed. That is the problem. A frontier general store was not really a goods business. Not really. It was an inventory business, a freight business, a credit business, a barter business, a weather business, a community information business. And very often it was a small local financial system pretending to be a counter full of flour and coffee. The shelf is what the customer notices. The ledger is what decides whether the store survives. To understand the trap, start with why the general store existed in the first place. On the frontier, distance was not a minor inconvenience. Distance was the market. If a farm family lived 2 or 3 days from the nearest larger town, a local store did not simply save them a pleasant afternoon. It saved work time, travel risk, animal feed, weather exposure, and the cost of leaving the farm when there was always something urgent to do. In the communities of the Great Smoky Mountains, the National Park Service notes that farmers might spend 2 to 5 days traveling to and from the nearest town. That made the local general store more than a shop. It made it a commercial and social center, a banking and credit center, a source of supplies, and the place where people gathered. That is the first hidden product. The store did not only sell coffee. It sold saved miles. It sold time. It sold continuity. It sold the ability to keep a household, farm, camp, shop, or ranch running without stopping everything for a long trip to a larger market. And because it sold access, it gained power. But before that power turns into money, the owner has to buy position. A general store in the wrong place is just a room with unsold barrels in it. The money is near a road, a mill, a ferry, a church, a post route, a mining camp, a logging camp, a ranching district, a courthouse, a railroad stop, or a cluster of farms that all need the same supply point. The best site is not always the prettiest one. It is the one where need naturally stops. In Cades Cove, Lisa and Greg opened a store near a grist mill in the 1870s. That mattered because people already came to the mill. While they waited for corn to be ground, they could buy supplies, trade produce, hear news, and talk with neighbors. That is the lesson. The store did not have to invent traffic. It had to sit where traffic already had a reason to pause. So the first investment is location. Then comes the building. Not a grand building, usually one main room, a stock room, shelves along the wall, boxes and barrels on the floor, hooks from the ceiling, a counter, a scale, a desk, a stove, maybe a post office corner, maybe a back room, maybe a storage shed, maybe a yard where wagons can stop. The building has to feel full, even if the owner is nervous. That is important. A
A general store sells trust visually. Customers look at shelves and decide whether this store is reliable. Empty shelves do not simply mean low stock. They mean uncertainty. They mean the owner may not have credit with suppliers. They mean the next trip might be wasted. They mean the store is not safe to depend on.
So the owner has to keep enough goods on hand to look useful, and that is expensive. Before the first customer buys a pound of coffee, money is already sitting in flour, sugar, salt, beans, rice, soap, kerosene, lamp wicks, candles, cloth, thread, buttons, shoes, boots, hats, nails, hinges, rope, buckets, pans, seed, small medicines, paper, school slates, candy, and dozens of little items that people only remember when they suddenly need them. The customer sees choice. The owner sees cash trapped on shelves. That is the first major trap of the general store. The more useful the store is, the more money is locked inside it. Some goods turn quickly. Coffee, flour, salt, sugar, soap, lamp oil. Some goods sit for months. Boots in the wrong size, cloth in the wrong color, a tool nobody needs until a particular repair fails, hardware that rusts in a damp room, seeds that miss the season, medicines that lose trust. A case of goods bought because the salesman promised they would sell, but the local families never wanted them. The store owner is not just buying products, he is buying guesses. What will people need before the next wagon arrives? What will they be able to pay for? What can be accepted in barter? What will spoil? What will sit? What will become essential during a storm? What looks like variety but is really dead money? This is why retail on the frontier is much harsher than the surface math suggests. In a dense city, a store can specialize. A cloth merchant sells cloth. A grocer sells food. A hardware shop sells tools. If one customer does not buy, another may walk in minutes later. At a frontier crossroads, the general store has to be a little bit of everything for a customer base that may be small, seasonal, and cash poor. That means wide inventory with narrow demand. Wide inventory makes the store useful. Narrow demand makes the store fragile. Now comes freight. The store looks like a retail business, but underneath it is a supply chain business. A barrel of flour or a crate of tools does not appear on the porch by magic. It might come by rail to a distant town, then by wagon over rough roads. It might arrive by river, then by pack animal. It might move through several hands, each one charging for time, risk, handling, storage, and distance. Every mount cost, every muddy road adds delay. Every broken wheel adds risk. Every swollen river can turn inventory into a late delivery. Every storm can make ordinary goods expensive before they even reach the counter. The customer sees a high price and thinks the storekeeper is greedy. The storekeeper sees the railroad, the wagon, the driver, the road, the crate, the breakage, the delay, and the wholesaler's bill. This is where markup starts to lie. Yes, the owner buys lower and sells higher. But the spread has to pay for freight, storage, rent or building upkeep, wages, broken goods, spoiled goods, theft, dead stock, bad roads, and customers who do not pay on time. And many customers did not pay on time. This is the heart of the business. Credit. Store credit was common in 19th century America and well into the 20th century. A grocer or general store kept account books, and customers bought on the store's ledger until cash arrived from wages, harvest, livestock, timber, or other seasonal income. To the customer, this was survival. Cheats, owner, it was both power and danger. Credit keeps people tied to the store. Credit lets a family eat before the crop sells. Credit lets a worker buy goods before payday. Credit lets the storekeeper become the person who makes shortage bearable. But credit also turns inventory into an unpaid loan. The flour is gone. The coffee is gone. The soap is gone. The customer promises payment later. The wholesaler still wants money now. That is why the thumbnail says credit ate profit. Not because credit was always foolish, because credit could make a store look busy while quietly starving the cash drawer. Every day customers come in. Every day goods leave the shelves. Every day the owner records names, amounts, dates, and promises. The store feels central. The community depends on it. But the ledger is slowly changing shape. It stops being a record of sales. It becomes a map of who owes you. And that is not the same as money. In the Smokies, some stores accepted eggs or honey in exchange for coffee, sugar, salt, and other supplies. At one store, a dozen eggs in 1900 could be traded for a pound of coffee. Storekeepers could carry a neighbor's account for months, sometimes up to a year. That sounds neighborly because it was. It also sounds dangerous because it was. Barter solves one problem and creates another. If a customer brings eggs, the store owner has value, but not cash. Eggs can break. Butter can spoil.
Honey can be resold, but only if someone else wants it. Corn, nuts, berries, produce, and farm goods all require the owner to become a trader in whatever the community can produce. The customer leaves with coffee. The owner is left with a question: how fast can I turn these eggs back into money? That is the second hidden business. The general store was not only selling goods, it was converting local production into outside supplies. Farm families turned eggs, honey, butter, berries, or labor into store credit. The storekeeper turned those local goods plus cash accounts into orders from wholesalers. The wholesaler turned those orders into shipments, and if any part of that chain moved slowly, the storekeeper carried the pressure. This is why the owner had to know more than prices. He had to know people. Who pays after harvest? Who always asks for more time? Who brings good eggs, and who brings the cracked ones under straw? Who will stay in the community for 20 years?
Who is leaving when work dries up? Who is worth carrying because his family will buy everything from you? Who is already in debt to another store? The owner is not only measuring sugar, he is measuring trust. And trust is profitable only when it turns back into cash. Now open the store on a good morning. The stove is warm, a few men stand near it, talking about the road. A farmer leaves eggs on the counter and asks for coffee. A woman chooses cloth and thread. A boy waits for a small piece of candy. Someone asks whether the post came in. Someone needs nails for a gate. Someone else asks if the storekeeper has heard the price of corn in the nearest town. This is the part people remember. The general store as the heart of the community. That part is real. Many stores served as social centers, post offices, trading places, local banks, supply houses, and information exchanges. The shelves held goods, but the counter held the neighborhood. This social role had economic value. The longer people stayed, the more they remembered what they needed. The more news passed through, the more central the store became. The more central the store became, the more customers treated it as their first stop, even when prices were not always the lowest. This is the hidden revenue stack. The store sold staples: flour, coffee, sugar, salt, beans, lamp oil, soap. It sold repair goods: nails, rope, hinges, buckets, tools, handles, wire. It sold household goods: cloth, thread, buttons, shoes, pans, paper, school supplies. It sold seasonal goods: seed, farm supplies, preserved goods, winter needs. It converted barter into account value. It provided credit. It handled mail or notices where that role existed. It gave people a place to hear prices, warnings, opportunities, and news. The strongest storekeepers understood that the goods were only one part of the business. The real asset was the relationship between the store and the settlement. But every revenue line carries a cost. Staples must be restocked constantly. Repair goods tie up cash. Cloth and shoes depend on taste, size, and season. Barter goods must be resold. Credit accounts must be collected. Mail and news bring traffic, but also interruption. People standing around the stove may become customers, but they also consume time, heat, and attention. The store is useful because it is open to everyone. The store is vulnerable because everyone brings their problems through the door. Now look at the operating machine. A normal day is not just selling. It is weighing flour, measuring sugar, cutting cloth, checking accounts, sweeping dirt from the floor, opening crates, stacking shelves, writing orders, watching small goods that can disappear into pockets, deciding whether a customer gets credit, deciding whether a barter item is worth accepting, deciding whether a slow payer is still a good risk, deciding whether to buy more coffee before the road gets bad.
Deciding whether to stock a new item because a traveling salesman promised it is popular in towns the local customers have never seen. The counter looks simple. The decisions behind it are constant. And because the store owner is often serving a small community, every decision has a social cost. Say yes to one family and no to another, and people notice. Press too hard for payment, and you look cruel. Do not press hard enough, and the store fails. Charge enough to cover credit risk, and customers complain. Charge too little, and the wholesaler eats you alive. This is why store credit was both a service and a trap. Some stores charged higher prices, partly because lending to customers was expensive. They were not only selling goods, they were carrying risk. But higher prices could also make customers resent the store, especially once they found alternatives. And alternatives were coming. At first, a frontier general store could be protected by distance.
If the nearest town is far away and roads are bad, customers do not have many choices. But the frontier does not stay frozen. Roads improve, railroads arrive, new towns form, a second store opens, cash wages become more common, customers compare prices, and by the late 19th century, mail-order countloads begin changing the whole relationship between rural people and the local store. Montgomery Ward launched a general mail-order business in 1872. Sears Roebuck followed in 1888. These catalogs offered rural customers a much wider range of goods than a small store could stock. They also made prices visible in a new way. That mattered. A customer who once depended on the local storekeeper for both goods and price information could now sit at home, read a catalog, and see what the wider market claimed things should cost. The catalog did not instantly destroy the general store, but it weakened one of its powers: information. The local store had been the place where the outside market entered the community. Mail order allowed the outside market to enter through paper. Then rural mail delivery improved. Rural free delivery began experimentally in 1896 and became permanent in 1902. Parcel post arrived in 1913, making it easier to send many goods directly to households. Now the store's old advantage, distance, was being eaten by logistics. That is the third trap. The general store is strongest when customers have few alternatives, but the same roads, rails, mail routes, and cash economy that make the community grow also create alternatives. Progress feeds the store, then progress competes with it. Now build the ledger. Imagine a frontier general store at a crossroads near farms, a mill, and a wagon route. The owner has a modest building, a stockroom, a stove, a counter, shelves, barrels, hooks, a scale, a desk, and a ledger book. At the start of the month, he orders inventory. Flour, coffee, sugar, salt, beans, soap, lamp oil, thread, nails, rope, cloth, seed, small tools, and household goods. The invoice is real. The freight is real. The goods arrive slowly. Some are damaged, some sell fast, some sit. Now customers arrive. Cash customers are wonderful. They turn inventory back into money immediately. Barter customers are useful but complicated. They turn inventory into eggs, honey, butter, produce, or other local value that must be resold. Credit customers are necessary but dangerous. They turn inventory into a promise. On paper, the store has had a busy month. The shelves are moving. The community is loyal. The store is clearly needed. Now subtract the part customers cannot see. Subtract freight. Subtract building upkeep. Subtract clerk wages if the store is large enough to need help. Subtract heat for the stove. Subtract broken crates, leaky oil, damp flour, stale goods, rusted hardware, shop-worn cloth, lost items, slow inventory, and the cash discount you could not take because your own customers had not paid yet. Subtract barter losses. Subtract bad debt. Subtract the cost of carrying accounts for months. Subtract the time spent collecting what people already motives instead of selling new goods. Now the month looks different. The store did not fail because nobody needed it. It struggled because everybody needed it before everybody could pay. That is the central tension. Need creates sales. Timing decides profit. In the optimistic scenario, the business works. You are on the right road. You understand the local seasons. You know what goods turn quickly. You do not overstock slow items. You extend credit carefully to customers whose work, land, crop, or reputation makes repayment likely. You accept barter you can resell. You build trust with wholesalers.
You use the post office corner, stove, and counter to make your store the place where people come first. In that world, the general store can become one of the most powerful businesses in the settlement, not because flour has a magical margin, because the owner controls access to supplies, access to credit, access to information, access to the outside market, access to a place where local need can be converted into goods from somewhere else. That kind of storekeeper can grow. He might buy nearby land. He might finance customers carefully. He might become postmaster. He might handle freight. He might expand into another building. He might become the person who knows the community's cash flow better than anyone else. In the bad scenario, only two ordinary things have to go wrong. A poor harvest slows repayment, and a better road lets customers reach a cheaper town store. The shelves still look full, but too much of that stock was bought on credit from wholesalers.
Customers still come in, but more of them ask to put purchases on account. Barter goods arrive, but cash does not. You cut back on variety, and people notice. You raise prices to cover freight and bad accounts, and people start comparing you to the catalog. A few old accounts quietly become impossible to collect. From the outside, the store still looks alive. Inside the ledger, it is carrying the whole community's bad timing. That is why the Frontier General Store could be a financial trap. It looked safe because everybody needed what it sold, but need is not the same as cash. A hungry customer is not always a paying customer. A loyal customer is not always a profitable customer. A full shelf is not always a healthy asset. A busy counter is not always a good ledger. And a respected storekeeper can still be one bad season away from discovering that half the town has been eating his working capital. So who really got paid? Sometimes the storekeeper did, but usually not by thinking like a person who merely sold goods from shelves. The strongest storekeepers treated the store as a doorway into everything around it. They learned who had crops coming in. They learned who was changing jobs. They learned which families were steady. They learned which goods disappeared every week and which goods only made the shelves look impressive. They learned when to say yes. They learned when to say no. They used the store to become lenders, postmasters, freight handlers, land buyers, middlemen, and local power brokers. But other people got paid too. Wholesalers got paid when they sold stock to the storekeeper. Freight operators got paid for moving goods over distance. Landowners got paid if the store rented its site. Clerks and workers got paid before the owner's profit was clear. Mail order companies later got paid by using bigger scale, wider selection, and better logistics to reach the same rural customers. The weak owner saw customers and thought customers were profit. The strong owner saw the same customers and asked what each household needed next, how they would pay, and when the promise would become money. Coffee, salt, flour, nails, cloth, lamp oil, seed, soap, mail, news, credit, a fair price for eggs, a way to turn honey into supplies, a way to survive until harvest, a link to the market beyond the hills. That was the real business. The store charged for the problems created by distance, isolation, seasonality, and shortage. But it also absorbed those problems. When the road washed out, it was your freight problem. When the harvest failed, it was your credit problem. When eggs spoiled before resale, it was your barter problem. When the catalog undercut your prices, it was your competition problem. When a family moved away owing money, it was your ledger. And when the wholesaler demanded payment, he did not care how important your store was to the community. So yes, a frontier general store could make money. In the right place, with the right stock, the right credit discipline, the right freight connections, and the right reputation, it could become the most important counter for miles. But it was never easy money. The goods were only the surface. The real business was access. The customer thought he was buying flour. He was really buying the ability to keep his household running without losing days to the road. The owner thought he was opening a store. What he was really opening was a financial machine made of shelves, wagons, trust, barter, weather, and names written in a ledger. That is the old ledger lesson. A general store was not rich because the shelves were full. It survived when the owner understood which goods would move, which customers would pay, and which promises were worth carrying until harvest. Because on the frontier, profit did not vanish only when nobody came in. Sometimes profit vanished while the room was crowded. The shelves were full. The counter was busy. The community was grateful. But the cash drawer was waiting. And if the accounts went bad before the shelves turned back into cash, the frontier general store did not become a guaranteed path to wealth. It became a room full of useful things that nobody had paid for yet.